Wow, we have a quorum. I can tell that already. Okay, are we ready? Oh, I love this fellowship. All right. Because we're going to rock and roll you into the fourth dimension tonight. My name is Wally P., and I am a grateful member of Cocaine Anonymous. I'm a member in good standing. I have not had a line or even any other mind-altering drug since October 30th of 1988, and for that I'm truly, truly grateful. One day at a time, yes. I need to thank Cocaine Anonymous World Services for this honor. Did not see any of this coming. I'm still in shock, but thank you for the invitation, and thank you for the gracious hospitality upon our arrival. And again, opportunity to get reconnected with old friends, and the opportunity to make many, many new friends. So anybody I haven't met yet, please come on up during the course of the weekend, whether tonight or during the workshop, or pick up a business card and give me a call anytime, because I do actually pick up the telephone and talk to people on a regular basis. I sponsor over the phone. That's going to open up a whole new channel, isn't it? I do it by Skype. I take people through the steps over with Skype. Anything to use the modern technology to our advantage. Because we don't want anybody to die from this illness. It's already killed too many. The whole idea is to stop, and stop it now, because the epidemic in the United States, I'm sure, is carried into Canada. And they're coming in younger and younger and sicker and sicker. And we've got to move faster and faster, or we're going to lose more and more and more. In terms of my journey, and I just want to make sure we are going to take everybody through the steps tomorrow at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Very abbreviated version of it. In terms of my journey, I want to start in Vietnam. I'm a Vietnam veteran, and thank you. Nobody said that when we came back in 1969. I can assure you of that. Whoa. Oh no, I'm tearing up already. That is, whew. No, I think I will. It's still so vivid in my mind because it is an integral part of this story. I'm on the DMZ for 2 years, and I'm with an engineering battalion. We're supposed to be building roads and schools and hospitals, and all we're doing is building bunkers, trying to stay alive. And I'm in a village with a South Vietnamese sergeant, and this guy comes out of the crowd with a handgun, and he puts it in the chest of the South Vietnamese sergeant walking with me, and pulls the trigger. And he falls right at my feet, and I watch him die. Then he puts the gun in my chest. I look at him, he looks at me, and he doesn't pull the trigger. And he looks back into the crowd, and some some Army guys came over, and they said, "My God, man, you're blessed. We just witnessed a miracle." And I said, "Blessed? Hell, I'm cursed." "Why are you cursed?" "I wanted to die. I wanted him to pull the trigger. I'm already a full-blown drug addict. I'm already a full-blown alcoholic. I wanted it to be over. I fully expected to come back in a body bag. And when it didn't happen, I turned my back on God and started blaming God for the war. And that was my 20 years of darkness after coming back. My drug of choice was opium, especially dipped in Thai sticks. What a way to see the Vietnam War, right? Woo! No, it took away the fear. I mean, the terror that we all lived in, day after day, night after night. It really did help me cope. And the VA in Arizona has even validated that I don't have a lot of the negative memory traces that other vets had, because I was stoned out of my mind the whole 2 years. But I came back 2 weeks after returning from Vietnam at a little place in New York called Woodstock. And yes, I am a Woodstock survivor. And my take on Woodstock is, while all my stoner buddies, while I'm over in Vietnam losing the war, all my stoner buddies are home winning the war in the United States. Sex, drugs, rock and roll. I mean, I'm all in. This is it. We've won. Until shortly after that, in fact, I was on my way to Mexico from Woodstock because I couldn't assimilate back into the United States. I couldn't assimilate with anything. I couldn't identify with anything that was going on here. And ended up in the jungles outside Acapulco for 6 months. It was a time where we were in the jungle and nobody was shooting at us. And that was my transition back into society. I was told the best drugs in the United States were in Hollywood, California, so I immigrated across the border, became a street junkie for a while, because the opium turned into heroin. It was about 1972 that I decided to kick heroin, and the easiest way for me to kick heroin was to pick up cocaine. I don't know if any of you have ever tried the cocaine cure for heroin addiction. I don't recommend it, but I got 20 years of experience to prove that it doesn't work. But I did. I made a bunch of geographics. I actually went to school and got a bachelor's degree and a master's degree under the influence. And I thought cocaine was the wonder drug. I really, truly did. Then it all started to get a little crazy up in Seattle because I married my cocaine dealer. I said, why pay for it? We have a daughter who, thank God, doesn't remember much of this. My wife died of this illness. She died, never got it, never got clean. But she was also a Seattle socialite, and I know a lot of people have put a lot of money up their nose and in their arm, and various and sundry ways of imbibing. She ended up putting $2 million worth of cocaine up her nose in just a few years. And she panicked when she got down to the last $500,000, and she started to traffic big time. And she got caught bringing a sizable quantity of cocaine into Hawaii and was arrested. And it was her first offense, and they still gave her 2 years. And she came out a hardened criminal and just never looked at another meeting. Well, she had people sign her meeting slips, you know how that goes. And just never accepted recovery, never accepted sobriety, and died of this illness. I was there when she drew her last breath. So I know that this illness can take you out sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly, but it will take you out. I'm doing a whole bunch of geographics, and I end up in Scottsdale, Arizona. We separated shortly after our initial marriage, and we tried to put the band back together a couple times. She had a couple stepchildren also. once in El Paso for a while, but the drugs and alcohol just destroyed that situation, and then we tried to put it back together again in Scottsdale, and that was the end of the line for me. I'm standing in the doorway of a house I was renting in Scottsdale, Arizona, and I'm watching my ex-wife put my daughter in the car along with her girlfriend, and my daughter's 14 at the time. And Cheryl turns to me and says, "I hope you realize you'll never see your daughter again." And I had no idea what had happened. I was basically in a cocaine blackout, and I destroyed the house. We must have gotten in a fight. We always seem to get in fights when we were under the influence. And I'd really torn the house up pretty bad. And I understood why they left. And that was my last cocaine. But something really strange happened to me, because even though that was such a profound experience, I just transferred addictions and picked up alcohol big time and started drinking daily. And it was a year after this that I finally walked into the rooms. And I did walk into several rooms. October 30th, 1988 was the last day of my using any mind-altering substances. I initially tried to do it my way. I did 2 meetings in 60 days. I was just coming in to prove I wasn't an alcoholic or a drug addict, because I'd already kicked cocaine a year ago. I mean, doesn't that prove that I don't have a problem? Ha ha ha. Such denial, such denial. And I hit the wall, and I learned from the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous that an addict without their mind-altering substance, or an addict without a program, is in serious trouble. Restlessness, irritability, and discontentment. Well, I hit the wall in December, and I started having severe headaches and major withdrawal symptoms. I couldn't think straight. I actually had to call in sick for a week, and missed something called Christmas. But 2 days after Christmas, I walked into my 3rd meeting. And after that meeting, the guy came up and tapped me on the shoulder, and he said, "My name is Phil, and I'm your sponsor." Whoa, what does that mean? Well, I'm going to take you through the 12 steps. Oh, those steps are on the wall that they read at the meeting. Okay. He said, "Yep, that's my job." I didn't know any different. I certainly hadn't picked up any of the nuances of the fellowship at the time. And he said, well, first he had to tell his story, how 20 years ago he crawled out from under a bridge, and now he was president of an oil refinery, which he was. And then he asked me if I did have a problem with mind-altering substances. And I said, no, I'm coming to these meetings to prove that I don't have a problem with mind-altering substances. And he said, well, it doesn't matter. Is your life unmanageable? I said, well, what's that about? He said, well, are you having trouble with personal relationships? I said, oh yeah, ask all my ex-wives. And that's plural. Says, you seem to have trouble with controlling your emotional nature? And I said, yeah, that's part of the reason I'm in these rooms, is because the Fortune 500 company I'm working for is getting ready to fire me. And they actually did, but it wasn't until 6 months later for the shoe to finally fall, but I'd already burned the bridges. And I said, okay, have any depression? Oh, God, all the time. Ask all the psychiatrists that are trying to drug me into oblivion. He said, yeah, I think your life might be unmanageable, but you're the one that have to answer it. Is your life unmanageable? I said, yes. He said, okay, you've taken step one. And that was it, right there, standing in the parking lot. which is page 30, paragraph 2, if anybody wants to validate that. It's right out of the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. See, I had no idea that this guy knew the original program, based upon the original book. And he said, well, you're on your way, and just want to make sure that we work together. I said, okay, sure thing. He said, I want to ask a couple questions. He said, do you have one of these books? I said, yes, I do. He'd given to me, I think, in my second meeting. Have you read it? No, I haven't. Being honest with him. Then he really upset me and said, can you read? I'm ready to take this guy on. Whoa, I don't care if you're 6'2" or what. Of course I can read. I got a bachelor's degree, I got a master's degree. So, whoa, slow down, Wally. Woo, chill. People who are new in this program, it doesn't matter how many initials you have after your name, are not going to be able to comprehend this book. So I'm going to read this book to you. Really? Didn't know that was part of the original program either. The sponsor reads the appropriate parts of the big book to the newcomer. But since you've challenged me and say that you can read so well, I'm going to challenge you. I want you to read page 25 of this book and come back tomorrow night. You see, that was the first hook, was coming back the next night to tell him what I'd read. That was pretty clever too. I mean, this guy knew his stuff. Whoa. What a way to start in recovery. There is a solution. That's the first thing I ever read. If he had said start on page 1 and drone on through the doctor's opinion, this book would have been in the trash. And I would have been gone. And dead. Because I did not realize how close I was. So I went home and I read it, and being the good student, I concentrated on the wording, and the next night after the meeting, in the parking lot again, he says, okay, Wally, what did you read? Well, I read fourth dimension. There's fourth dimension in these two paragraphs that you asked me to read. Fourth dimension. He says, congratulations, Wally, you got 2 words out of 2 paragraphs. Which is what we would expect a newcomer to be able to comprehend at this time in their recovery. Oh, I mean, he's trying to teach me, he's trying to show me, he's trying to demonstrate by his example. But then he went further and said, any other words in this that you remember? I said, yeah, the God word is in here. Whoa, what's going on with the God word? I am a 100% total, complete non-believer. And then he hooked me on the second step. Isn't it amazing? You don't have to believe in anything in order for this program to work? Nothing whatsoever. And if you don't believe, all you have to do is believe that I believe. It's actually on page 46, paragraph 1. Well, I believe you believe. You told me your story last night. 20 years ago, you crawled off from under a bridge, and now you're president of an oil refinery. Yeah, I believe you believe. Okay. And you're going to take the second step based on my belief until you get a belief of your own. See, part of the process was to not put anything in the way of a newcomer to get to step 12 as quickly as possible. And so I answered the second step question, page 47, paragraph 2. Do you believe you're willing to believe? I said, yeah, Phil, I believe you believe. Okay, got it. Okay, Wally, for you, since you're a non-believer, the rest of the steps are God as you don't understand him. So that's how I actually did the third step prayer with him, standing in the parking lot. God, as I don't understand you, I offer myself to you to build with me and to do with me as you will. He took out all the we's and the wilts and all the religious stuff. Again, it says it's optional, so he's changing the prayer to fit something that I can accept. Wow. So we did the third step prayer. So here we are on step 3, and we've taken maybe 15 minutes total over a 2-night period. And then he says, since you're such a great reader, Wally, I want you to read from the bottom of page 63 to the end of the chapter. It's titled How It Works. Okay. And so I took it home and I said, ooh, there's a lot of material in here. Okay, next night, he calls me over after the meeting as we're in the parking lot and said, okay, Wally, what did you read? It's an inventory. Oh, you're so correct, Wally. It is an inventory. How is your inventory coming? It's done. He said, how so? I said, ever since I walked into the rooms of the 12-step community, I don't have a resentment in the world. Not one. You know how delusional I am. Here we go. He said, well, you've got one now. I want you to put my name at the top of the list, and we're doing the 5th step tomorrow. So after the meeting the next night, he drove me to his house, and I had my inventory. And this was my entire 4th step. A blank sheet of paper with his name at the top of it. Phil. Felipe. He was Castilian Spanish. And he looks at it and says, Wally, this is a perfect 4th step. We would not expect anybody to be able to do anything more than this when they're new to recovery. See, what I didn't tell you is that I'm going to write the 4th step. And my sponsor wrote my 4th step inventory. See, little did I know that he knew the original program of recovery that goes all the way back to 1935. He had been taken through the steps in the 60s by somebody who had been taken through the steps in the 40s. So I was just a couple generations removed from the original program of recovery and was taken through the steps by somebody who did know the original program of recovery. Wow! I know, before you get up and walk out, let me just explain that a little bit. I love this book. I love big book studies. I love doing the steps in depth and detail. But I was new. I was still defiant. I was still belligerent. I still didn't even believe I had a problem. And Phil answered that one in a hurry because he said, it doesn't matter whether you believe you have a problem or not. It's only going to be 2 to 3 hours out of my life, whether you make it or not. Oh, see, I didn't know. Well, of course, what do you know when you've only gone to 3 meetings? I didn't know. So he started asking the questions. Okay, what are you angry at? And I started talking. I started writing down. Okay, what are you afraid of? Okay, okay. And who have you hurt along the way? Have you done any lying, cheating, stealing, any selfishness? I said, well, maybe a little. Well, let's talk about it. So we talked about it, and he wrote. And then the classic question, and this only took an hour and a half, is what are you going to do about it? That is another hook. Oh, what am I going to do about it? Well, I think I should make amends to my parents. There's a whole bunch of situations there in terms of being dishonest, and it's mostly dishonesty in that regard. And I might have to say something to an ex-wife or so, and said okay. And I even had it on there. I said, I really haven't done much with the IRS lately. such as pay my taxes. So he circled, and that was the 8-step amends list. And he said, what are you going to do with your parents? Well, I'm going to go see them. Okay, that's a direct amends. I mean, he just kept going down. Okay, and what are you going to do with the ex? Oh, no, things are just getting really, really bad. Okay, well, we'll talk about maybe a letter. But don't send it. Don't send it. Okay. Don't send it. The IRS, we'll talk about that later. When are you going to make amends to your parents? And I said, well, I'm going to do it this Saturday. And he said, well, normally I would go with you because I learned that was also part of the original program. The sponsor and the sponsee do the 9-step amends together. A lot of people didn't realize that's part of the original program either, but he did. And it's not that you sit in a room together, but as a sponsor, you normally drive the sponsee to where the amends is to be made, or take a bus together, or walk together, and the sponsor waits out in the car, or in the parking lot, or down at Timmy Hortons down the street. But the key was the sponsor was to be the first person the newcomer saw after amends was to be made. And he said, I have a meeting at the oil refinery. And but I want you to call me immediately after you talk to your parents. The meeting should be over by 3 o'clock. Okay. Well, I started talking to my parents at 2 o'clock, and my mom turned on me. And she said, I do not know what this cult is that you joined. Yeah, this cult that I joined. But I'm not listening to any of this. And she gets up and walks right out of the room. So at 2:05, I'm calling the oil refinery. And Phil had the bat phone, and it bypassed all the receptionists and went straight to his corner office. Since he was president of the oil refinery, he could do that. And he picks up the bat phone and says, yes? I said, it's Wally. I told you, I'm in a meeting. Yeah, but my mom just walked out of the room. You do not move. You stand there, you stare at that phone on the wall, and I will call you back. I need your parents' number. This long before cell phones and long before any of these other modern conveniences that we have today. So I gave him my mom and dad's phone number, and I stood in front of the phone, and at about 2:55 the phone rings, and he says, what are you going to do? And I said, well, I'm out of here. You see, that's part of the problem if a newcomer is going in to do something alone. What if it goes badly? Where's the newcomer going? To the dope den, the crack house, the bar room, the liquor store. No, the newcomer's supposed to run into the sponsor. Okay, he had me standing there for 50 minutes. I'm okay with that. What are you doing now? I'm out of here. I'm driving back to Tucson. He said, well, I'm going to drive south from Casa Grande. You drive north from where you are, and we're going to meet in downtown Tucson. And we did, at a Denny's. And so he was the first person I saw after the amends was made. The IRS was just absolutely unbelievable. Because I hadn't paid my taxes in 4 years. Now it's, I've already been through the steps once now. I mean, they're working on these, and then, we went back and we did this again and again. But also, he had me moving into 10, 11, and 12, and making sure that I got quiet in the morning, and I was terrified of people. I was terrified of speaking in public. Because I was almost killed in a marketplace, and there were people around, and so I was terrified. If there's more than 4 or 5 people in the room, you just turn to red or gray, and that's all I could see. I could not see flesh and blood. That was the terror of Vietnam. And so he said, since you really are having trouble relating to people, I just want you to know that you didn't make the business meeting last night, and we've elected you our intergroup rep. So, but I could get down to the intergroup office and listen and take notes and go back to the little home group business meeting and tell them what was said, and they'd vote, yeah, we're going to vote yes on this or no on that. And then I'd take it back and then I'd vote for the group, and it was something I could actually do, especially being so terrified of people. But the IRS, that was something else, because I made the mistake of not talking to somebody, not talking to a tax attorney. And I started on 88 and started working my way back. I paid my taxes for 88, I paid my taxes for 87, I paid my taxes for 86, and the IRS sued me for not paying my taxes in 85. Oops. And this is not an audit. I mean, this was a full-blown trial, and I could have been incarcerated. And they sent me a letter saying I owed them $60,000 US. Whew, okay. So then I did get an attorney. And I'm sitting with him, and we're talking about it. He says, you're going to lose the case. I said, really? He said, yeah, you're going to lose the case. He said, I've been doing this for 30 years. 23 years as a prosecuting attorney. No, 7 years as a prosecuting attorney, 23 years as a defense attorney. Yeah, you're going to lose the case. So I hope you can muster some faith and courage. I said, well, yeah, I do have some faith these days. And he said, I don't know where you got your faith, but I got my faith in a fellowship called Alcoholics Anonymous. I said, really? Okay. I can identify with that. And we went to trial. And sure enough, he knew the judge. The judge had actually driven down from Phoenix to Tucson, 120 miles, to try the case. And the prosecuting attorney went with her, so they both were from Phoenix. They started the trial, and because it's being recorded, I'm just going to use my last initial. The judge, after they swore me in, said, Mr. P., if you could tell the court why you chose not only not to pay any income taxes in 1985, but not even submit any taxes, tax returns for the year 1985. Oh, Your Honor, it was such a bad year. I was having such a problem. I was going through another divorce. I did a transfer from Louisiana to Arizona, and every time I opened the tax boxes, I could see my ex-wife's signatures on the checks and the handwriting on letters, and I'd go into depression, and I'm going, this is going nowhere. And my attorney jumps up and says, oh, by the way, he's a member of Alcoholics Anonymous and Cocaine Anonymous. He blows my anonymity in the IRS tax court. Here we go again. I can't tell you how much of this actually was fact, but I can tell you it was actually true. It's exactly what went down. The judge turned to me and said, is that true, Mr. P? Are you an alcoholic? Are you a cocaine addict? I said, yes, I am. Okay. How long have you been clean and sober? I gave her the time. Okay. Where do you go to meetings? Oh, Northwest Alano Club and other areas of Tucson. Okay. Are you being of service to the 12-step community? That's a quote, unquote. And I go, oh my God. I was just elected GSR for my AA group. So I got down off, and I said, can I make excuse for just a minute? I went down and I went through my briefcase, and there was a letter that GSO had sent me. Welcome me to the general service structure. And she looks at that and said, Mr. P, well, you're not just an alcoholic, you're a registered alcoholic. And she submits it as exhibit number 1 for the defense. That's the only thing we had. That was it. Then the prosecuting attorney started hammering me, and about a half hour in, she said, Mr. Prosecuting Attorney, give me a minute to ask Mr. P a question. My daughter's an alcoholic. And the reason I know something about the Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous is because I've been taking her to meetings. She's lost everything, she's moved back home, and she's drinking every day. Is there anything you can suggest that I talk to her about? And I said, I can't think of anything to talk to her about, but I'm going to make a suggestion that you consider going to Al-Anon, because that's for family members that have people in their families that have drug and alcohol problems. And she said, oh, okay, thank you, Mr. P. On with the trial, another half hour. Oh, Mr. Prosecuting Attorney, let me ask Mr. P another question. My son's a cocaine addict. And he's been going to these AA meetings and he's not getting it. And he's just continuing to use cocaine on a regular basis. Is there anything that you can suggest under these circumstances? And I said, well, I believe that identification is really important, especially when you're new to recovery. He may be in the wrong room. He may want to start going to Cocaine Anonymous meetings instead of Alcoholics Anonymous meetings. And she said, well, thank you. I'll take that under advisement. Continue. As the prosecuting attorney is summarizing, unbelievable. She stops the trial. And she says, I have heard everything that I need to hear to know that Mr. P, who's on the witness stand today, is not the same Mr. P who did not pay his taxes in 1985. And as far as I'm concerned, he does not owe the IRS any money whatsoever. Case dismissed. Yes. Whoa. And here again, I'm with a member of the 12-step community. I mean, he was the first person I saw as I was trying to make my amends. I mean, it all fit within the original program. At 1 year of sobriety, my sponsor sat me down and said, Wally, I'm not going to be alive much longer. And he does pass away 6 weeks later. And he says, if you remember this one thing, you may not find it necessary to take a drink for the rest of your life, or a drug for the rest of your life, whether I'm here or not. And I said, what's that, Phil? He said, if you don't know where we came from, you'll never know what a miracle this program truly is. And I did not know where we came from. And I really didn't care, because I'm a scientist. I mean, I have a bachelor's degree in chemistry and a master's degree in statistics. I don't do sociology. I don't do psychology. That's all that gray stuff in the middle. Nah. I balance equations and run experiments. And my sponsor sent a person who absolutely detested history out to learn about the history of the 12-step community. If you don't know where we came from, you'll never know what a miracle this program truly is. I went home and I thought about what he'd said, and I took a book down off the shelf, which was Dr. Bob and the Good Old Timers. And there's one of them over in the auction area, a first edition, brown cover. It's a real deal. First edition, Dr. Bob and the Good Old Timers. And I'm not reading it, but there's some pictures in it. Yeah. So I take it down to my little home group and said, has anybody been to Akron? And nobody been to Akron. Anybody know if there's a Dr. Bob's house? And nobody knew if there was a Dr. Bob's house. And Phil saw me doing this and said, Wally, don't bother these people. If you want to find out about Dr. Bob's house, find out for yourself. I'm sure he probably meant call Akron and find out if there was a Dr. Bob's house. I got on an airplane and flew to Akron to find out if there was a Dr. Bob's house. I flew out of Tucson on a Saturday evening, a red-eye, and I got to Akron about 10 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday, November 16th, 1989. At this time, I did have that one-year medallion in my pocket. And I called the intergroup office when I got off the plane. And again, thank God there was somebody at the other end of the phone. And I said, is there Dr. Bob's house? And she said, well, there wasn't up until a few years ago, but some members of the fellowship have purchased the house and in the process of converting it back to the way it was in the summer of 1935, when this whole thing started. I said, that's interesting. And she said, even more important, they're having a meeting there today. It's at 1 o'clock this afternoon, and I think you might want to go. And I said, yeah, I'll go. And she said, if you make a commitment, I'll make a commitment. You'll never find Dr. Bob's house on your own. She gave me directions to the Arid Club, and she called ahead. 2 people were waiting. They escorted me across town. I ended up in the porch of Dr. Bob's home, Dr. Bob and Ann Smith's home, 5 minutes before the meeting started. What they had done, and they only have one meeting a year in Dr. Bob's living room. One meeting a year. And they tried to pack 75 people into this little tiny house, and I'm standing in the doorway. I have no idea what's going on. They had taken all the furniture out of the living room, they put a table in the middle of the living room, put 8 chairs around it, and it was a speaker meeting. And I stood in the doorway for the next 2.5 hours, listening to these old timers. The only requirement to speak is you had to have 40 years of sobriety. 40. Every person at that table had been sponsored by Dr. Bob. Yeah, every 8 out of 8 had been sponsored by Dr. Bob. Every person at that table had been taken through the steps in one day. Every person at that table was sponsoring within a week. And they were still sober. 42, 46, 48, 52 years later. This was my 12-step conversion experience. Standing in that doorway, realizing that I was not there by mistake, that this was a divine appointment. The God that I don't understand had directed me to be there at exactly that time, to hear what I needed to hear, so that I could dedicate my life to studying the history of the 12-step community, which I've done for the last 28 years. Yes. All of them. Thank you. This has led me on many a journey. I've been through all the major archival collections. Cameron, a good friend of mine, mentioned that they're putting together a virtual archives, and this really fascinates me, where they're going to put all of the archival collections available online. And my heart is singing because I presented that to Alcoholics Anonymous in 1994 and it was turned down, and has been turned down every year since. So Cocaine Anonymous is going to places that other 12-step programs fear to tread. Yes, Cocaine Anonymous. Whoa! Love you guys. And I've been whittling away at the history of CA, but I now have a new Cocaine Anonymous mentor who I've known for more than a decade, and we both have dedicated our lives to studying the history and carrying the original message of recovery, as well as the thousands of others, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of others that have over the years. I've kind of lost track of time, but let me see. Am I okay? Fine? Okay. Wow. Two things. In 1996, I met a gentleman by the name of James H., and I ran with him for the next 10 years. This guy became a mentor, a total, complete mentor. I was a student at his feet. He actually got sober one day after Bill W. and 6 months before Dr. Bob. He could have been the co-founder of the first of the 12-step programs. But he stayed in the background. He stayed working with people one-on-one. His belief was that it wasn't about the accolades. It was just working eyeball to eyeball, which he did every day for all of the years that since that date. Bill W. was December 11th, 1934. James was December 12th, 1934. In 1937, when Bill was leaving the Oxford group, again, everybody in those days got sober on the 4 spiritual activities in the Oxford group. You know, one of the statements in the big book that people really have a hard time wrapping their brain around is that there's not a mistake, but there's actually a misstatement on page 59 when it says, here are the steps we took. These are not the steps that Bill took. These are not the steps that Dr. Bob took. These are not the steps that any of the first 100 took. They took the 4 spiritual activities from the Oxford group. Read page 13 of the big book, because that's where it came from. Bill takes the 4 spiritual activities, has a conversion experience, and never drinks again. Yes, in early 1938, he converted the 4 to 6. He got them out of order. He screwed it up. Good going, Bill. Because in order to fix it, he has to convert the 6 to 12. So it's the same process. It's surrender, which is our steps 1, 2, and 3. It's sharing, our steps 4, 5, 6, and 7. It's amends, our steps 8 and 9. And it's guidance, our steps 10, 11, and 12. And James knew the original program. He was there when the big book was written. And when I met him, he was 90 years of age. We traveled for the next 10 years. He passed away at 100 years of age and 71 years sober. Yeah. Whoa. Thank you, James, for again taking me under his wing and letting me run with him for these 10 years. So we would do conferences. Well, we do. I'd take everybody through all 12 steps during the day, and then he would come up and he would tell his story and how this thing all went down in the 1930s and into the 1940s. Just amazing 1-2 punch that we were doing all over the country. One of his classic one-liners, and I did want to pass this on because it's just so profound in my personal journey. Because he's got about 100 of them, actually. And I've written them all down, and I've written some material about it. Oh, speaking of writing, I received no income from the sale of any literature that has my name on it. Not one nickel have I made from any 12-step community, from any member of any 12-step community. Not one nickel. This is my gift to the 12-step community. This is my 12-step work for which I cannot be paid. Read our traditions. I know there's other people out there, hawking books. I don't. Mine are gifts. I've heard that there's a French translation of one of my books, and didn't even know that. And like 4 or 5 meetings being held in French right here in Montreal. I was just Skyped into Russia a couple of weeks ago, listening to the Russian translation of some of my work, and it's not my work. It all came from Dr. Bob. Bill wrote the book. Dr. Bob interpreted the book and gave us the original program of recovery in terms of doing the work in 3 to 4 hours. And that's what I've been passing on ever since that afternoon on November 16th, 1989, standing in the doorway of Dr. Bob's and Ann Smith's home. Oh, then how do you cover all your expenses for doing this? I'm a 100% disabled Vietnam War veteran. Yes, I get a big check from the United States government every month. That's what covers my traveling around the United States, Canada, and around the world. So I'm being subsidized by the United States government to be here. I am. And I'm proud to say that. I'm 100% disabled because I'm terminally incurably ill with cancer. I'm going to close with that story. I got ill in the year 2000. And I couldn't work. So all of my bank accounts went to zero. My savings account went to zero. I had to sell property just to stay alive. And by 2003, everything's gone. I have no insurance, and in the United States, you know how bad that is. The last house on the block was the Veterans Administration. I swore I'd never walk into a VA. I'd never have anything to do with the federal government. Even though I'd stopped blaming God for the war, I had come to believe and had a conversion experience in Dr. Bob's living room. But hospitalized twice. The third one was in 2003. The VA opened me up. They did exploratory surgery. They found it was cancer, and it metastasized. It was Agent Orange cancer from Vietnam. It had metastasized, and it was in my vital organs, and they just buttoned me up and they sent me home to die. I got a second opinion and a third opinion, and all 3 doctors said the same thing: 6 months to a year to live. Through divine guidance, and we'll talk more about that tomorrow during the workshop, step 11, I received what I considered to be a divine message. And that message was, do not let the doctors poison you. You were poisoned in Vietnam. Seek non-toxic treatment for the damage caused by Agent Orange. Seek non-toxic treatment. I've chosen a holistic approach to my cancer. And this is subsequent to the transition. I want to get to the transition as I move up the scale. On the second one, you were poisoned in Vietnam. My sharing partner said, well, go down to the VA, see if they'll fess up. And the bad news is that they had to wait for 95% of the American vets to die before they started granting benefits. They started granting benefits in 2002. I filled out the form in 2003 and went from 0 to 100% in 2 months. First one, do not let the doctors poison you. I did turn down the chemo that they were offering. It didn't work. Everybody who tried it died. So I dodged a major bullet with this divine guidance. I went on over 100 prayer lists. The only treatment I've had for my cancer is your prayers. Have I come to believe? Absolutely. I have come to believe in the power of this program, the power of step 11 changes lives. Carrying this message to others changes lives. I get to witness it everywhere I go. Whether it's 1 or 800, 1,000, I have the best seat in the house. I get to watch you change right before my very eyes, just by telling my story. But my miracle has been magnified by thousands of other people who have come forward telling me their miracles. And that has solidified the deal in terms of just how powerful the spiritual solution to addiction actually is. Now, my first doctor, when I walked in to turn down the chemo, he said, "Well, what's going on?" And I said, "Well, I believe in two-way prayer. I believe that God spoke to me at 2 o'clock in the morning in Hilton Hotel parking lot in Phoenix, Arizona." And he's looking up at the ceiling. "Oh my God, Vietnam nutcase." And he writes me up as a non-cooperative patient, refuses conventional treatment for his illness. He writes me up. He says, "We're done. Don't waste my time." Well, I'll tell you what we're going to do. You go home, enjoy the last few weeks, maybe a couple months of your life, and we have a bed waiting for you at hospice. Because of your prayers, that bed is still waiting 15 years later. Thank you for letting me share. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Yay! We did it! Woo! Tell me this program doesn't work. Just try and tell me. Woo! All right.